Hello, everybody. Thanks to Karen. I just started the recording. Was a little bit late. Yeah, hello and welcome, everybody. And sorry for any inconvenience, but the usual platform we use for webinars with Gnome software, Big Marker, was not very cooperative today. So we switched over to my Zoom account, and I hope this will not make your user experience lesser than usual. Today I want to talk about Pano2VR and CSS. As you probably know, Pano2VR's output, what we can see interactively in the web browser, is essentially HTML5 as the layout language and the semantic language constructing the page as we see it from the layout and from the structure. And with JavaScript doing all the functions we need, everything interactive. In fact, JavaScript is now moving this panorama from left to right. That's doing all the functions and how the things look like. Why there are white borders around the thumbnails. This is CSS. CSS is responsible for everything what has to do with styling and with the look and feel you have, and you can control how everything looks like. Today we want to dive a little bit into the last part, into CSS. Usually you don't see CSS with some minor exceptions. When you're using Pano2VR, you don't see any CSS except when you go to the skin editor and you see some stuff. Let it be here. Let's go to the skin editor, and you see here in the last versions you have here when it gets to size and position and similar parameters, you can choose between pixels, percents, and you can choose CSS, where you can add your own CSS calculation, especially if you want to have, for example, a container 100% white, but you want to subtract or 100% high, and you want to subtract the 100 pixel high header. Then it's a calc you can enter here. That is a part of CSS you can directly see and use in the skin editor. Other parts are seen under advanced with the most elements. The set index is a CSS parameter. It's usually set to default, but you can control what layer is on top. You see first when you're looking down to the stack of elements you see in your viewport. You have CSS classes, and you have CSS classes, and you can see you can define and name elements to get a grip on it, to do special styling stuff outside or inside of the skin editor, but you have a lot more possibility as you can write code. Writing code, you can can be written into CSS style box. There's a pencil, so you have a little bit place to do it. CSS classes, this is a self-defined name you can use, especially let's name it map container. Then you simply enter a name of your choice, and you can define elements to address them for certain styling tasks. This is a second location where you can use CSS, and the third location is when you go to the general properties. When you click outside of the canvas, you can see here variables where you define the variables, you know that, and then you can external files you can use. Here some, I'm just removing it here, and you can here see in the style sheet, this is not just a comment, but I'm trying to close it, don't save it, and enter a fresh simplex skin, so you can see the first CSS was standard and default built in into Pano2VR. When you go to external files, nothing is in here. I'm come back to this part later, and here you have embedded style sheet, and there's a simple line of code which is the default CSS you have. The default CSS you have here at hand to change the general font setting for the whole skin. What you see here, it is a class which is addressed .ggskin. With a dot in front, it's a class, and with a hash, it is an ID. Usually we operate with classes here, not with IDs, and usually you write this CSS stuff a little bit like this. The end of the line usually is a semicolon, and this is a style that is better readable. This is a little snippet of CSS you can edit inside of the skin editor, on which is working for you directly inside the skin editor, so you don't need any external stuff to do when you want to adapt your styling and you want to extend the possibilities you have when you go to a certain element. Let's have this element, and you have here some text. There are a lot of properties here with position, size, font, alignment, word wrap, auto size. All this stuff is entered in the user interface of the skin editor, and it is translated for you into CSS for the final output when you save it and when you do an output here in the main window of Pano2VR. This will be translated, assembled, and put on the place where it needed to be. So, okay, sound. I hope there is only a little bit noise from the air condition, but shouldn't be any strange sound here. Okay, so I'm just from time to time I'm taking a short look on the chat box for ad hoc questions. Yes, it's Landschaftspark Nord in the panorama in Duisburg. Okay, and you have now the possibilities to change stuff a little bit beyond the possibilities the GUI and the user surface, the user interface gives you. And let's try some first examples. I'm starting with a skin I prepared, and I'm going through some parts where I modified the skin here. I'm going back to my usual, where is it still, but here. I produced a skin. It is in the same folder where the Pano2VR file is, so hence the $D. Here sign as it is a modified simplex, but I only want to modify it for this project, this very project. So it's not it's not very suitable to put it in the general template folder in the system. So I only want to have some adaptations here. I'm just opening this this skin editor again with my modifications. And I added a map with a map component from the map toolbox here. If you go to the simplex filter here, you see this one. This is a map component with a button, with the pins, and with the map itself. And I added OpenStreetMap for the location where I am. It's only 4 panoramas. I just put that together to have a nice visual stuff to do a little bit styling with CSS on it. So what I changed here, I'm going to some stuff I changed with my CSS, and I'm showing you how this can be done. You see here, I have an uppercase letters here for the tooltips of the controller. I have a condensed font, a special font for my thumbnails. They are showing up here or at the tooltips here, and I have here a tooltip for the map, and did some styling with the map here with the rounded corners and so on. So what I've done here is the adding of additional CSS code can be done with on two ways. The first way I showed you, this was by these CSS box. It is a text box. It has a very it is not very big in font size, and you always, if you want to change something, you always need to open the skin editor, go into this text field, and you see what I've done. I have added an external CSS file. I recommend this very to do this way, because it is one text file. You can use it externally. You can use a skin with some functions, with some map and all this stuff, and you can add this afterwards. So you can modify the look and feel of your skin in all the detailed aspects, how the text is, how the text is showing up, how the fonts are, how the colors are. And this can be easily separated from the skin by working with a custom CSS file. I have usually very good structure for that. It has proven to be working very flawlessly, and it is very organized. So let's have a look how this is done. And I'm going to output my stuff on here is the actual output I see, and now I need to open a Finder window. I closed a lot of stuff due to switching from the here we are. So this is my Finder structure. I'm working on a Mac, but this everything what I'm talking about today is exactly the same on Windows, and with, I think, with no exceptions. So this is the structure here. This is the Pano2VR file. This is the skin file I put into the project folder. The project folder here is simply CSS for the topic today. And here are my panos, and here's the output folder. And here is a folder I usually always put into my projects. It's called extras. You can call it what you whatever you like, but you need to remember the path of your custom CSS file is extras custom when you're working on it. And now comes now you need two preconditions to make this work before you can start to code your CSS code. First thing is you go into your output panel, and under advanced you add a folder here and name it extras. You can, if you're going, I close it and you make a plus sign, add folder. You go into the Finder and you add this extras folder, open, and then it's listed here. This makes Pano2VR copy the extras folder and everything what's in it in another place. Here, this panel section is called assets, and if you hit the output button, the generate output button, in the output button there will be a folder. It's called assets, and there in assets there's a folder extras, and everything in here will be copied as well. And this is an external file, and this external file is can be edited. Hopefully here. So I'm do you want to just open workspace? And this is a code editor. I suggest to use this one because it's free. It's Microsoft Visual Studio Code. It's open source and it's for free. And it is an extremely powerful code editor. And you can see, usually I just throw the CSS folder, your project folder in here, and you have the whole folder structure here. And here's my extras folder. In here is my custom CSS. And I will go to these code lines very soon. And here is the output. You can see how the index HTML looking like, and the Pano XML. This stuff is outputted by Pano2VR. And here you see an exact copy, assets, assets and extras. It's here, it's joined together. And here you find the step. It's just a copy. It's copied when you hit the output button. It's copied to assets, to the assets folder. And from then on, you have your path, everything okay. And if you go to the browser and you want to see what's loaded, you can hit the source code and you see here is assets extras custom CSS, and it's loaded properly. And you can see all the stuff you need in here. So you don't need you don't need the CSS section here and under external style sheet. The second thing is that the second precondition is to need to enter this file here. This this section, the asset section, only copies the file, but the index HTML you get when you get here when you hit the output button. The index HTML isn't knowing that it exists, so you need to tell it, and this needs to be needs to happen in the skin editor, and it is simply the path assets/extras and then the name of the file you want to have. You can add more files as you like, especially when it comes to additional fonts and so on, and you want to have them locally hosted, and you can go this way. So these two prerequisites, you need the correct path to your CSS file. You can skip this, as everything you do here now you're doing externally, and you need to check under advanced assets to output the whole folder, copy the whole folder into the output folder. So I hope the basic structure of working with external CSS is clear now, and I think it's pretty easy. If you've done it once, you can be sure it is very okay. So now let's see what is happening here and how to change or to tweak the stuff you want to see in the in your skin, in the ready skin when you output this. I have done some stuff. Let's go to the output and just inspect some points I changed for this project. Only a few, just to get you. And okay, what's the name of the tool? I have a short link list. There are alternatives to Thomas here. The tool is Visual Studio Code from Microsoft. There are a lot of alternatives. Visual Studio Code is for Mac and Windows. You have Brackets and Atom. These both are open source editors, and for Mac and Windows, both are free. Notepad++ is Windows only. Bare Bones BBEdit is Mac only. TextMate is Mac only, and Sublime Text I think is Mac only too. You have a huge selection. I think I make a link list for you to get this later, and to conveniently grab your tool, the tool of your choice. I like it very much here because it is it's very largely configurable, and when you do a fresh install, there are about 20,000 or something like that plugins for this, and the most plugins are for JavaScript and CSS for Meta. And if you start the program first after installation, everyone who has it already knows what I'm talking about now. Who didn't have it, on the first run, you get some recommendations for plugins, and the JavaScript, CSS, HTML for Meta is this thingy is doing all this coloring stuff on all these pretty neat look of your code, and this is much better readable than in any other environment. As the skin editor isn't thought for typing endless lines of code, it's very basic what you can do here when it comes to write code. So you need some more professional tools if you're doing it more extensively. And that's what we do now. And let's have a look at some elements I introduced here and changed the look. Basic is it's the simplex skin with some minor tweaks, and let's go to some stuff I did here. I have a map. This is a usual map module. It's a little bit modified, and the map button, I attached the map button to the card itself. So we removed it from the controller to the card map container itself. So this looks like this. This is a map toggle button. Usually it's put into the controller. You can switch it off here, and there's the map in it, and the map pin. The map pin is here. I'm usually throw it into the map container, as it's when it's used at the map pin, it disappears anyway, so it's no problem to have it here. I have the map here. I wanted some rounded edges on the map itself. The map is a simple container. It's pretty similar to a container, but it just contains a map, and it has an appearance and a rectangle section, and I have a white border, and I have a 8 pixel wide radius at the corners. Here you can change the radius of the corners when you want to have rounded corners on all 4 edges. And it is shown this way in the skin editor. It's the same when you go to the map button. It has also rounded corners, not the button, but the button has a background. It is a black translucent, and it has a radius of 4 pixels. And what you see here in the result is I don't have the round edges at the left side because I don't want it. I want this straight and this rounded. And that's not possible by now in the editor, in the skin editor. You only can affect all 4 corners. So let's switch to the custom CSS. And this is what I changed. And now I want to explain this code, what I did. You see here, I have classes. I'm addressing classes .map button and .map box. So where they are, if I go to the map button, it is here. Okay, button toggle map. There should be some classes. Where is it? I'm hiding it very good. There it is. The map button, it is invisible because this is an invisible container. This is inside, this is outside, and this is a map background. This is a shape we actually see. And here I added map button as a class. When you define it, when a class is defined, never put a dot in front of it. The dot is meant to address, and without a dot you define it at the point you want to have it. And then the second one is the container. And the container has okay. I put it to the map itself. Map box. Here's the other class I want to have because I want to change this radius here. And now I explain what the code means here. Usually, if you have border radius, if you enter these two values, the upper value is border, is the width of the border, and the other value is border radius without the bottom left. This is a general radius setting for the whole box. If you want to get more specific, you have bottom left, bottom right, top right to address each corner separately. And then you can tweak your styling a bit more. And you set it to 0, so you have sharp edges. And what is that meaning? This meaning? The exclamation mark and the important addresses a very important mechanism in CSS. To understand it, I need to dive a bit in the code, and at the same time, I show you an indispensable tool you need if you're working with CSS code. Every browser has built this stuff in. In Microsoft Internet Explorer is, I think it's F12. In Safari and Chrome and Firefox, it is equally the same. It is Command-Option-C. And or if you want to go through the menu, it is Tools, Web Developer, and in the Inspector. And this is an analytic tool. You can grab nearly every aspect of a website. All the people are working with websites know this tool very well. You can change live values here in this box, and you can manipulate the web page, which is living right now in your browser, but it is downloaded from the server, but is now an independent instance here at your computer, and you can modify it while it lives in the memory of your browser and manipulate everything what you want. And you can do a lot of stuff with network performance. You can check how long everything needs to load, and you can check JavaScript and enter commands or get messages from here and so on. You can really dive into under the hood of a website. And to get an element, you need just to activate in the upper left corner of this web developer this blue icon here, and then you see the screen is blue, and when I move my mouse, I can address elements, simple buttons. You see here, you can already see here above my cursor, there is div.ggskin.ggskin_svg. So you need, there are some class names given by default in the skin editor when it was outputted from Pano2VR. And if you want to have a close look as an element here, let's check the button of my map, and then you right click here and say inspect element, and it is jumping to the code where all this stuff is happening. And now you have here, it's GG skin. Well, okay, let's do it again. I missed it here. Okay, here we have it. And here we have a container. This container is the box where the whole map button is in. It has no class. Then we have a div, and here's a class map button. And here you see the border radius, and you see all the properties. The border radius of 4 pixels comes from the skin editor. The border top left radius is strike through because there is something other overwriting it, and this is my code font custom CSS line 27, so you can easily locate your code. And the moment when you write exclamation mark important, then everything what's in here is overwritten. That is the last word talking about this property. When there's important is everything. I don't care what anybody, this line says, I don't care what anybody says before. What I'm saying is the last word. And so you can, oh, this is the overriding. mechanism. It is absolutely important to understand this in CSS. So you can roughly make some properties, some fonts, font sizes, some layouts at the beginning of a CSS file. And if you go down in the lines more and more deeper, everything can and this is the question Markus has. The custom CSS is not always overwriting CSS settings of the skin of the container. It depends on it is a so-called inline style. An inline style is if you make a double click here in the inspector, you see everything here. What is built here into style. And this is directly applicated CSS. It is always living in the style folder. You see CSS. This is a property. It is a value, a semicolon, property, properly colon, value, and so on. And everything what's written here is usually overriding everything what's written before or in any CSS, except you overwrite it later with these important. And so you can manipulate the CSS at any time and at any place. Usually you notice that you need this important if you're doing code and you need, okay, the class is correct, it is on the correct side, it is in the correct place, it is defined correct, but it isn't showing up. And I can make a short example here to demonstrate how it works, and I'm going here into this line, and I'm deleting this important. I save it, and now it's important. You save the text file, the CSS file, then you need to go to Pano2VR and need to make a fresh copy for display. Output it. It is going very fast because only code is exchanged. Usually, I'm not going to open output because it opens a fresh browser window. I only output it, and I'm disabling it in preferences on advanced. Is open after creation needs to be checked off. And so I'm using always the same window. So my inspector stays open. It stays at the same place, and I'm hitting Command Shift R to reload the page and every affiliated files. And now there is some. There should be okay. Okay, it's not didn't come through. Obviously, I didn't save this. And you can do it from the skin editor as well. If you are in the skin editor and working here, just hit Tools, Generate Output, or Command or Control Alt G, and then you need to wait for the skin editor to reappear, and then swap to the. No, it should be okay. There is. Okay, but I can demonstrate it live. Obviously, it's not working. So if I'm removing, and here you can, this shows you how you can do live edits. I have deleted the important. The round edges at the border are back again, and they are coming from border radius 4. If I add the important back, the border radius will be not completely overwritten. If you unfold it here, the border radius is consisting of 4 corners, and the left ones will be, you can also do the following. You can do the border left radius. You can set it to 0, usually here. And you can put all the 4 properties in here, but it's shorter to leave this general setting with 4 pixels from the skin editor and just override this here and to save it. And so I think I know what is happening here. I have the wrong. That is it is one little drawback, because one or one point you need to take care about is there are two custom CSS. There is the one which is already outputted, and is the one which will be outputted. And I edited the other one, so now it's working here. I need it to delete it here, so I'll save it, and I am doing the output and reload it. So now it's original as it intended, and with the sharp corners. So this is a way to overwrite a general setting which I defined in the skin editor with two short lines of code in the custom CSS. Here it's easy to use it for two. This is called a selector, and it is easy to do it for two selectors at once, because both need to be set to 0, because the map box has a radius of 8 and the map button has a radius of 4, but both needs to be set to 0 on the left corner. And so that is one setting. Now let's do some stuff what is asked for very often. It is to change the default font of the skin. If you have a client, he has a typography, he has a design manual, and usually it's restricted. Everything what has to do with his company needs to use this and this font, or sometimes it's several fonts. And here it comes to some nice extensions you can do with a very little effort to pimp your typography and the look and feel of your skin. You can even do it here in the skin editor itself with these embedded style sheet, but I recommend to do it in the custom CSS. And what do we need to do to get a custom font? We need to get an access to the fonts. There are two possibilities you have for this. One possibility is, and that is the most convenient, is you use a font which is already prepared for delivery in the net. And there are two prominent ones to name. And I'm going to the browser and show you one example. And this example is Google Fonts. Google Fonts are for free. You can download them and install them on your computer. You can do a lot of stuff with them. And these are, all these fonts are usable for free and with no restrictions. And what's very nice is a font file can have a significant file size, especially when you have different font types. Maybe you know TrueType fonts or OpenType fonts. These are the most common ones for desktop usage, and these are only twos. If you have web usage, you have a lot of browser generations and browser types, and you have 5 to 6 different font types you need to use with modern browsers, with Internet Explorer, with Safari, with older versions, and so on and so on, and with iPad and iOS devices using a little bit other stuff. So it is a little bit a zoo of file formats, and the nice thing is all this stuff is handled by Google's servers, and Google have dedicated font servers with pretty large horsepower to deliver fonts for your website, or even for very big websites with very heavy traffic. So how can we do? How can we get Google Fonts to run on our website and to run in Pano2VR? I have selected here the Oswald. You can see it in my code, and it is here. And you can grab it with clicking on the font preview, and then you can select what sizes and what styles you want to have from the font family. There are font families which are pretty large, with a lot of different styles, with italic and fat and condensed and light, super black, and so on. And you have some fonts which have only regular bold italic and bold italic, and you can select one, some extra light. So I'm just clicking together a usual font kit. Usually I'm using a light, and I'm using a regular medium here. I think it's a 400, and the larger the number, the heavier the font is, and a bold with 700. And you can select your own set of fonts. You can do your own set with only one font or whatever you like. You can download all this stuff, but I'm not doing it here. And the next important button is to switch over to embed. On to embed, you have two possibilities. The first possibility is you add a link in the head of your HTML page, but this is usually the domain of the HTML template Pano2VR uses. To explain it a bit, what is here in normal GGT? This is building all the stuff you can see here when you head over to index.html. And this link Google font proposes needs to be placed here in the head, but you have no direct access to it, or you need to change this template. It's possible, but it's a pretty complicated coding stuff, because this HTML template, this normal GGT, is not that easy to understand. So it is better to not to build this line. Here it is, but it is better to use the import function inside of our custom CSS. This is the line we are generating by linking to our assets folder, and we don't need to touch the normal GGT, and only touch it when you know what you are doing. And so we need another method for embedding the font going to import. And now this is a HTML tag, and this is a CSS code line. Let's click it. Hey, what's going on here? Review, embed. Oh, I'm happy to see that not all JavaScripts at Google are working pretty well. So they are humans only. And so this line of code is what effectively loads Google fonts, this kind, the Oswald, and these 300, 400, and a 700 style. And it is built by Google as a package and delivered when you call this address. This is the URL for it. And you simply need to add this line of code on top of your CSS file. And that's what I'm doing, what I did here. And from now on, you need here the second line. This is where the font family is introduced or defined when you want to have it. And I did it here for the, let's go down here for the tooltips. This is a font family. Now I have my own font called, and here's a text transform. It is a CSS property which turns all letters to uppercase, and it is what we are seeing here when we are going over the tooltips here, over the controller buttons and over the close map. So how it's done? Now we want to have this really this style, and now we need to define the related classes in our skin editor. So there are two ways to do this. Here we have the tooltip of the map, and I added a class tooltip. Pretty easy. And here you have dot tooltip. But what is this? If you have the tooltip, then the tooltip is the outer element, and the text itself is living inside another div inside of this. Let's have a look at in real life where this is living. So here I check the inspect element, and it is very important to understand as Pano2VR has a pretty straightforward mechanism for placing skin elements in the final HTML page. There is always an outer wrapper. It is a container for it. This container is for positioning the element, for making it visible, invisible, to transform origin is where the anchor is, and so on, and has it a shadow, and so on, how large is it. And the content itself is wrapped in another div, and this is the inner div. And so here we have tooltip is a class, and now and this div is inside of this tooltip div. So if you go to the code, you see, take this tooltip container, look inside of it for div container, and this div container needs to be text formatted with this font and placed uppercase. And here you see is the text is here, close map, and you see it's not uppercase. It will be transformed by CSS. It's a styling element. And this is the way it works. So when it comes to here to the controller buttons, they have all the same uppercase Oswald typo. How it's done here, you can easily do it pretty straightforward. You go to the controller and make it visible, and go to zoom in and enter tooltip. And you can do it for this and for this and for so on. And here we have the full screen button, but here I was tired to do this with all buttons. There's another way. And you can do the following. I have, and this is a very nice mechanism of CSS2. If you going to the controller, just give the controller a class. The controller named controller, and now we have the controller itself. Let's head over to the browser, and I'm going to adjust a button and scroll a little bit up, and we have here here you see now it's blue marked in the viewport. It's GG Skin container, and there is a controller. Here is the class I defined. And in this controller class, you have only text elements which are working as tooltips. So you can address them all together. And all text elements inside in Pano2VR's skin editor are getting always let's check one of them, zoom in, inspect element, and you see GG skin SVG, and there should be a text. Here is my originally given tooltip, but all text fields in the skin editor have the default class GG skin text. So it's pretty easy. Take the container class, and inside of the container class, all default text elements, GG skin text, have this style. And this is what I've done. This is the way, the general way. This is for all elements in the controller. GG skin text, and then the inner div. And so this is for the map, and this is for the whole controller in one line. And this shows the mechanism in CSS to drill down from a general big unit to a smaller unit, and down to the unit we really want to style in any way. And if you have a good structure with naming your classes and to building your structure, you can add all this stuff with a very little lines of code. Here I have the general GG skin. So this is a general font for the complete skin. This is the original code you find in the external style, the embedded style sheets in the skin. I copied away from here, and it is the originally Verdana area. There are system fonts. They are all, available. One of them is always available at any machine, and it is a default. And I did a command to switch it off. The command is always /*//. And here I override. I usually didn't need it because it stands below and overrides it, and but I just commented it out. And here the Sophisto is the other font, and this font is coming from Typekit. Every one of you who has an Adobe account, Creative Cloud account, you can use Typekit. Typekit was originally a font delivery website, very similar to Google Fonts. And if you have a Creative Cloud account, you have Typekit built in. And you can go to Adobe Fonts and you can have your own web projects and to use fonts. And they have a little bit different embedding URL. It's a unique code for you and your projects. And I need to, okay, so I switched back to German. That's what's ugly. Okay. But if you go to Adobe and your fonts, you find all this stuff. And if you want to know exactly how it works, drop me a line. Yeah. Okay, Daniel has a question. I'm just having a look at two questions for it. Tooltips, is it possible to implement a delay so that tooltips are shown immediately? Yeah, yes, you can use it. You can use a logic block and not using visibility on mouse on parent element is the usual way, but you can use mouse over parent and switch alpha and put a delay so you have a delay with the element showing up. And the Typekit fonts, the usage is perpetual as long as you have an Adobe account. After that, the fonts are not working anymore. It is you as a developer need to have the account. It's not your client doesn't need an Adobe account for embedding. And oh, nice, delay will be implemented in Pano2VR. Oh, it's great. Isn't there a DSGVO as a GDPR issue with Google Fonts? It is. It is for both. There is a GDPR issue for Typekit and Google Fonts as well, because you are loading resources from an external server, and you cannot be sure it's not a US American server. Before I come to an end, I want to show you an exact answer to this. Host the fonts you own. And it is possible with Adobe, but it is from the licenses, it is bound to your Creative Cloud account. Even locally hosted fonts from Adobe are not having a valid license anymore in a living web project when you if you cancel your Adobe account. So I recommend to do it with Google Fonts. And with Google Fonts, you can download all your stuff here and as a family, and it is a little bit complicated. It is a complicated process, and there is a nice little tool for it. And there's a web app I hope I have, here it is. It is a Google Web Fonts helper. Heroku app is a web app family. It is yeah, some kind of fancy utilities, and these utilities are doing stuff, especially with these with such type formats and anything to clean up stuff and so on. And here it is Google Web Font Helper. It is collecting the EOTTF. So this is a font file, the five flavors and associated CSS snippets. And let's have a look how it is working. I'm taking some font. Let's have. Okay, any fonts, doesn't matter which. The process is pretty straightforward. You have character sets. Sometimes you have with some. Let's have a like. Okay, that's what I want to show. Some have Latin extended. If you need to have diacritic symbols for Eastern European languages, or some very special stuff. Some languages have some signs. You also need to use Latin extended. There is a bunch of more characters available in this font. If you are sure you only want to use English or English, then you can stick with Latin, and then you can select here your font styles. That is only a demo preview here, and this is the CSS you need. And now I need to have a look at my okay, yeah, at my cheat sheet, because this is some stuff I'm always fiddling around with. Here is a font face definition for this style, for the next style, and so on. And you have a path to your font where it will live on your server when you are ready with this process here, and you can adapt it. Usually, I'm doing it with the name of the font, so I name it Alio. Alio / and you see all path of all font files here are changed to this path of the folder. And then you can download all this stuff and copy this into a font file. I'm just doing it here. I'll just try it. I copy it, and I'm creating a file. There are several ways to do it, but I can do it here, new file, and it is called aleo.css. Moment, it's not aloe vera, it is aleo with an O. Enter, it's an empty file, paste, and now you have all this code here inside. Now you need the code files, and I make a new folder, and this folder is named aleo. And now I download all this stuff and put it into my folder, CSS. Usually I have a folder, it's material, and throw it into. And then I select all the, oh, where is my Finder? Here's my Finder. And I'm unpacking it. And okay, let's see. Don't mess up with the output folder, go here. And so you have the alias CSS, and now we have here the material folder, and now unpack it, and you have the Latin folder, and take all these fonts here, copy it, and throw it into your extras Alio folder, and everything what's in here is copied with this line in the assets folder. So the font is living there, and then you can use it with the name. So the font name is Aleo, and if you change it, you should be able to use it. And then there's a pretty nice stuff with there's a pretty nice feature of doing it this way. Is now the fonts are living at your server, and you have no problems with with DSGVO in German, or GDPR, the data protection and data privacy regulations. So everything is coming from your server, and you don't link to other servers or to servers in the US. So I think that's pretty much it, what I wanted to show, to give you a peek into CSS tweaking with Pano2VR skin editor. You see most of the stuff is happening in the skin editor, and with the corresponding classes you give to elements and the code you're writing here in the code you're writing here in your external code editor, and you can do pretty much stuff. And CSS is not that difficult to understand. It is you need to know these words, and you have a lot of resources in the web. And hit Google and go for CSS. One of the most convenient sources is usually it's self-html.org, or you go to Mozilla, the developer portal, or W3 schools. You have all this stuff in detail explained with examples, and try yourself and so on. It's very recommendable to head over to W3 schools. I just enter it here to have it in the list for you later. So I hope this was a sufficient overview about the mechanisms CSS is working in the skin editor and with the skin editor, and what you can do with it. And it gives you a lot of freedom, and you can style nearly everything in the what is not accessible out of the box in the skin editor, and it enables you to do this 5% fine tuning. A client notices, okay, this is really professional, and it is the little things that is very, very important, and it gives you a lot of tools at hand to individualize your project for the needs, for your own needs, and for the needs of your client. So now let's go over the chat box. Okay.
Hi, Thomas. I just wanted to point out the 2 questions from Marcus Lach and Adam.
Yeah.
Just a little bit up in the chat room.
Yeah. Yeah, does a custom CSS override always CSS settings of the skin container? If it does not, use important, simple as that. Just use the exclamation mark followed by important, because a lot of styles in the output of the skin editor, what's made and constructed by Pano2VR, is set as inline styles, as I showed here in the box. Usually, you have with some websites, or with a lot of websites, you don't have this style attribute at all. But here it is pretty much straightforward to do it this way. It makes a sense from the point of view of Pano2VR to do it this way. And but all properties which are not listed here can be overwritten easily by following custom CSS, or however you name it. And if it doesn't, if you really need to override a property found here or in the inner element, then you need to use important, but everything is reachable. I hope this answers the question. And Adam, could I add a transition to an action using CSS? Yes, you can. And it's really easy to do with logic blocks. The logic blocks with transitions are doing nothing else. But in the action settings, okay, you can do it. In the action settings, you have, if you have here, let's say here we have we have alpha, and you have transitions. All parameters you have here, which are not on off, 1 0 or true false, but have a scale of steps in between, can be used with transitions. You can do it. With CSS as well, because these transitions, if you here go to a transition, then you have a time, and this is always outputted. It is also outputted as CSS code, and there you have a transition as well. You can put it into your coded CSS file as well. And this is a CSS transitions. Yeah, just head over here and go to CSS transition, and you'll find there's a lot of stuff transition, and you can see everything what is here transitions. It is very good explained, delay, duration, property, and so on. And you have the table what is not working at all browsers, and so on. Here it is everything. It's simple as that. Add a transition tag. You have the width, and you have 2 seconds. And if you change the width by what means ever, then this will happen not in a sharp step, but it is going gradually. That is the same what is a transition applied to a logic block is doing in code when it's outputted. So Typekit, I think I answered it. What's happening when a device is not able to display a used font? That is pretty much, then you have pretty easy, because then you have a fallback font. Every font needs a fallback font. If you have a font, this is a font you want to have, or here the Oswald. Sometimes it's most of the time it's written in quotation marks, single quotation marks or double. It doesn't care. And sans serif is a general family, and then it gets the first sans serif font. It grabs on the machine and displays it. And usually, if you have a local hosted font, you won't never see this. It is usually working. If you have a CDN, it is a content delivery network. It's also called a CDN delivery here. Content delivery network is what Google and Adobe does with fonts here, or what other Amazon Web Services does. It is a very powerful server network around the world, and it is very fast and so on. And but to be sure that really this font you want to have is displayed, it's hosted locally at your server. And if it doesn't work for any reason, it is falling back to serif, sans serif, or monospace. There are some, just Google for fallback fonts. It is 3 words: sans serif, serif, or monospace. And yeah. Generally, Daniel asks, is everything that's possible in external files also possible within the skin editor? In this way, yes, it is. But I prefer and I recommend to do it in an external file, because you have here not only fancy colored letters, but if you start to write font, and you have font size, or you have large, smaller, and you see as a font, and you say, okay, I have the font weight, then it offers me the weights and bold and so on. And usually you are only typing a few letters and hit enter, and everything is there. And you have a lot of convenient typing tools here and correction tools. And if you're typing some nonsense here, font underscore size, and it knows it, and you see, okay, you see a curvy underline, there's an error. The error is marked in the position here where it is. And this is extremely convenient, and it saves you from making a lot of errors, just very often having a semicolon here instead of a colon. That is a very frequent error. It is everything. It's marked here. That's not the case inside the Pano2VR. And okay, yeah, I have done the coding in such an editor with correction tool and then copied it right into the skin editor. It's okay too. Yes. Mm-hmm. So, any questions I always see or that I've always seen? I think I have it, huh? What do you think, Karen?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, yes, the webinar is recorded.
I think Marcus and Danielle are having a conversation.
Okay, yeah, Daniel, is there a case when you need that? Okay, I'm usually using external files for a lot of other stuff. I come to this next week because I'm talking about JavaScript, and CSS is also important when you work with JavaScript, just for addressing elements and so on. Okay, yeah, sometimes yeah, sometimes it's an advantage to have it intern, so it's saved within the skin. If you want to have it for reusing the stuff, the extras folders, then there is I recommend to make a skin in your system folder, and to make a skin in your system folder, and usually I have a folder with the same name as a skin, and this is playing the part of my extras folder, and that is when I'm going to use a prefab skin, and this has usually a companion folder with the same name, and there are my fonts, my JavaScripts, or whatever I need to do to play this thing. It's living in the system folder. But usually it's working in the project folder here. This is a customization and individualization stage I have with the most of projects I'm doing, and so it most of the time it lives here. So yeah, I like to having it all in place. Yes, it's okay. A feature request to Thomas is at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Maybe Thomas will pipe in there. Yeah, maybe. if there's going to be a search feature in the skin editor.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would be really nice, but it is a feature request also for me.
For me too.
Yeah, if it gets really complicated and the skin becomes more and more complex, it is yeah. Some people are seconding that. Okay, so yeah, I put a little text file with the URLs for the editors and the font stuff to be delivered on the Pano2VR website when it comes to the recordings of the webinars and all the accompanying stuff.
Oh, great.
And I send you the recording when it's readily processed. And yeah, it was nice to have you here. Sorry for the inconvenience for suddenly switching the platform, but Zoom thing works quite okay.
Yeah, thanks for helping us out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for
yeah, right. Yeah. And thanks for everyone for coming over and hopping over. We know that pretty much everyone's using Zoom anyway, so we hope it wasn't too bad for you. Wasn't too disrupted. Yeah, so thanks a lot, Thomas. It was great. Learned a lot. And thanks everyone for joining us. Remember, next week Thomas is talking about JavaScript, so yeah, you should definitely join on that one too. And yeah, so we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Have a good night. Goodbye from Vienna, and see you.
Bye.
Bye.